Everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of the Android Invasion, the fourth story of the 13th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the fourth Doctor. The Android Invasion is the 83rd story overall. It's 4 parts long and it's written by Terry Nation. This story is also the second story that Terry Nation has written that has not featured the Daleks. So the plot of the Android Invasion is as follows. When the TARDIS lands in the sleepy English village of Devisham, Sarah thinks the Doctor has finally gotten her back home. But all is not as it seems. The village is unusually deserted, and deadly white suited spacemen patrol the countryside. When the dead begin to come back to life, the Doctor decides to contact UNIT. But the UNIT friends are also dangerously changed. Who is the senior defense astronaut, Guy Crayford, and why is he in charge of UNIT? Who are his true masters, the Krauls, and what insidious plans are they concocting behind the scenes? The Doctor soon discovers that the invasion of Earth has already begun, and if he doesn't stop it, mankind will be utterly wiped out. The Invasion, in my opinion, is a very good story. It gets a fair bit of unwarranted hate, but I like this story and it's a tad underrated, even though I do feel that this story does have its faults. The production of the story was rather good. I like the sets of Devasham, the interior sets like the Third pub and the space station where units had been operating in. And I actually like the location forming that doubled for Devasham, and I like the woods nearby. It for some reason it reminded me of Emmerdale. I don't know why. Yeah, because there weren't any farms there, or maybe that's why it's confusing me a bit. When Devasham looked abandoned with no occupants or any signs of life, other than those androids in the white suits, it looked very creepy, and I think that definitely worked. And I think Tom Baker, and I think the scripts were okay. I think Tom Baker and Elizabeth said they didn't actually like the dialogue that they were given for themselves. So I think they pretty much rewrote their dialogue together, and I think that was quite good because it pretty much showed the strengths that Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen had as a duo. The direction by Barry Letts was very good, and I was surprised to see him return in the director's role, as he was like the producer and for pretty much the majority of the John Pertwee era and the beginning of the Tom Baker era. So of course he stepped on it after Robot. The music of the score was brilliant from the start of the story. Like, it really grabbed a hold of me, especially when that unit soldier was just walking towards the cliff. Even though he was actually an android, he was just walking and twitching, and he just threw himself off a cliff as soon as Doctor and Sarah arrive. The plot of the story is actually very interesting. The android invasion takes inspiration from the invasion of the body snatchers, with the whole theme of facsimile human beings. Same with Terror of the Zygons. Well, in Terror of the Zygons, there were alien shapeshifters, and in this story, there were human androids. Is that what there? Pretty much all the humans were android doubles in Devasham. Even though Devasham, when the Doctor and Sarah had spent the first 3 parts, was actually in the planet Poseidon, the Krell's home planet, but then halfway actually takes place on the real Devasham, where the humans are operating along with the real Unit HQ and Harry and Benton and the other guys as well. Oh, but then obviously the android doubles coming to us as well, and obviously I think the overall theme of the story was the whole mystery, the whole hysteria. It was actually done very very well. It was very tense as well because you definitely had, when you're watching, you definitely had that feeling of like who's who. You can't really tell who's who, and even though one could be an android, and unless it's like very obvious, like how the Doctor deduced that the Sarah that was driven for like the last half of part 2 was actually an android because she drank ginger pop, because even though the real Sarah Jane doesn't actually like ginger pop, and the Doctor noticed that Sarah's not wearing a scarf as well. But there are some issues that pretty much hindered the story, which I'll get to later on in this review. The plot twist of Devasham actually being on a side and was actually a good one. Definitely that I think it was definitely hinted at in the beginning, but then it was later confirmed when the Krauls actually wanted to destroy the fake Devasham alongside the Doctor. The story has some great moments, especially the part in part 2 when the Doctor actually found out that Sarah Jane was actually an android, and I think towards the end of the story, I think towards the before the Doctor Who cliffhanger thing came in, I think the Doctor actually threw the android Sarah, and then her face comes off and it has all these wires and mechanics underneath, and that was pretty damn scary to see the least, especially for someone like Sarah Jane. we were all loving seeing her like that. It's just quite creepy, and I also like the fact how it continued in part three when the Doctor actually escaped, and obviously the android Sarah had a handgun, so I think Sarah Jane, the android Sarah was just pretty much seated and was still shooting at the Doctor whilst he was running. And so obviously the real Sarah was actually adopted by the Crows, and that's how they were able to make the android version of her. And obviously how the Doctor found out was, I think the Doctor pretty much caught on to the fact that Sarah wasn't actually real. Sarah wasn't actually real, and when the Doctor was told by Sarah to meet him by the stores near the Field Lee pub, and then the Doctor offered Sarah some ginger pop, and then Sarah was actually took it, and then the Doctor was like, something is off. But then obviously the Doctor said that her scarf was missing, and when he last left Sarah, her scarf was missing, and then this Sarah actually had a scarf, and I actually thought that the Doctor was going to bring up the ginger pop, but I think that was just us for the audience to catch on to. I also like the start of the story where that unit troop was just twitching with that music playing in the back. It was just twitching and just walking towards the cliff as if he was in a trance, and then as soon as the Doctor and Sarah arrive, they see him and he just throws himself off the cliff. And then comes back to life later on in the story. So onto the acting of the story, which I actually thought was great. Tom Baker did a great job with the story, and I think he definitely had a lot of fun with it, and you can tell by his actions and pretty much how to play the Doctor and the Doctor android, and as well as writing the dialogue with him and Elizabeth Sladen. And yeah, as I said, it was quite. They did a good job writing the script together. And speaking of the android Doctor, that when Sarah Jane actually met the android Doctor outside the TARDIS in part four, he was acting very creepy, and obviously I like the fight scene between the Doctor and the android Doctor in part four, and I think the Doctor was able to use the android Doctor to try and defeat the Crows by using the Crow virus to destroy. I think it was Stigron or one of them. I'm not sure. It was a great scene. Elizabeth Sladen and Sarah Jane was great in the story, and I also liked how well she played the android Sarah as well. It was very convincing, but even though for a few minutes we pretty much caught on to the fact that this is not Sarah Jane, this is just an android double. Ian Marter returns as Harry Sullivan for his final outing, and it's a shame that Ian Marter is actually android Harry for at least most of the story, and then in part 4, that's when we see the real Harry Sullivan, and then he gets abducted along with Colonel Faraday in the ship that Crawford and the rest came in, and so he still does a good job, but I still wish you got like a proper goodbye scene between the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry. So this is also another unit story, and the Brigadier is absent, but it's actually explained that the Brigadier was actually in Geneva. So this is the first unit story to feature unit without the Brigadier himself. So RSM Benton, that's representing unit family in the story, in his final appearance in Doctor Who as well. And once again, John Living pretty much plays his android double more so than he plays Benton in this story, and he does a great job. But it's a real shame that this had to happen. He doesn't actually get a proper goodbye scene with the Doctor and Sarah, considering the fact that Benton has been with the Doctor since season 6. That was pretty much 7 years ago. And we don't even know if he even survived this story because he was attacked by his android double, and then we don't even see him anymore until they pretty much defeat the Crows, and the Doctor and Sarah just rush up to the TARDIS and say goodbye. And so it is a bit unfair that for someone as beloved as Benton actually gets an ambiguous fate, which was a bit saddening really. But we do find out that in Mordrin Undead, in the Fifth Doctor story, that he actually survived and he retired from units and became a used car salesman or something like that. So for great characters, they got really rubbish exits. So onto the side cast, they're all good, and they all played like android doubles. We have Colonel Faraday, or as I like to call him, the Brigadier knockoff. He was a unit officer that actually had an android double, and he wasn't really in charge of unit. But I think Guy Creeford was actually in charge of unit in the android verse. But on Earth, he was the real Faraday, along with Harry, went to the space freighter to meet up with Guy Creeford, but they were attacked and captured by the Crows, and then Sarah Jane actually had to free them. I wasn't really too keen on his character. It was very obvious that he was a Brigadier clone, and he even bloody sounds like Nicholas Courtney, and I was just like, what? I know Nicholas Courtney wasn't able to come back, but is this the best you can do? I didn't like that, to be honest. And obviously you had Guy Crayford. He was the astronaut that piloted the space freighter I think it was Jupiter. Yeah, Jupiter. So and then I think he was missing for 2 years, but in actual he was missing for 2 years, and everyone thought he died. But then the crowds actually hijacked his ship and pretty much brainwashed him into thinking that his body was heavily damaged and he lost his left eye or something like that. Yeah, but the doctor was able to convince him that the crowds had been lying to him and his eye was pretty much intact. But he later turned on the crowds, and I think he tried to help the doctor, but the crowds ended up killing him instead. He was a very complex character, and I liked him. You could definitely tell that he was being like manipulated by, I think it was Stigron, and you can definitely tell that there was some sort of manipulation relationship between the two characters. And we also have Adams. He was the unit troop whose android jumped off the cliff when the Doctor and Sarah arrived, and then I think when the Doctor and Sarah actually were able to arrive on Earth. I actually liked the team because it's quite funny, because the Doctor asked Adams if this was the first time he had seen them today, and he looked very perplexed. He was like, what? It was a very funny scene, and I definitely wish he actually did more in the story. So on to the enemies. We had the Crows, we had Stigron and Chidaki. They were the ones that masterminded the plan with the androids and Devasham, and they pretty much created Devasham and the planet Poseidon by scanning the memories of Guy Crayford, and that's how they pretty much got the androids and the androids and the town and everything all there. They actually had good dotedly intentions, but especially when they made the Crow virus. But I found the Crows to be very generic and rather boring, because they were very forgettable. They didn't even do much. They weren't even. I mean, they were threatening, but weren't that threatening to say the least. They were just. I think the androids were more of a threat than the Crows, the big bads, the Crows themselves, and that was just. I wish more was done to have made them more interesting. I think Terry Nation, I think he could have done better, but I think Robert Holmes, I think he could have done better himself to try and at least make them interesting, but fair enough. So, on to the faults of this story. I did find the story speaking to be a bit iffy. I mean, it was good in some parts, like it kept me interested throughout, but it's just there are other parts I just found rather boring, to say the least. But there were moments that pretty much made up for it. I didn't really like how I think my main problem with the story actually comes from how the characters were actually written, such as Harry and Benton, because they were like vital characters for in the past few years of Doctor Who, and then obviously in this story, this is actually their final story. They're pretty much just reduced to pretty much doing nothing, almost nothing, and pretty much the actors were pretty much playing their android selves for at least most of the story. And as I mentioned before, I was a bit upset with Benton's fate being ambiguous, because we don't even know if he's alive. We don't even know if he survived or died until the Modrian and Dead. We actually found out he actually survived. I had a feeling that was supposed to have returned for a future story, but I bet Hinchcliffe didn't really want to rely on using all the time, and he wanted like a bit of change. And I don't blame him, because I think it was time for these units to at least stay back while the Doctor and Sarah, or whoever the new companion is, Leela, to pretty much do their own thing. So, and I actually found the ending to be quite abrupt. I mean, I think most of that could have been done. I think that ending could have been done to at least have a nice goodbye between Sarah and Harry. Maybe Harry saying that he's happy on Earth and doesn't really want to travel with the Doctor anymore, and that would have been a good ending for him, to be honest, because, yeah. So to conclude, the Android Invasion had a great premise filled with mystery and moments that made us wonder who were the androids and who wasn't the androids. But the execution and the writing of the characters was a bit of a letdown, and led to some missed opportunities as well. So I gave the Android Invasion an 8 out of 10. My next review will be The Brain of Morbius, another dear favourite of mine, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching this review. Please let me know your thoughts of the Android Invasion and this review itself. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and join my Discord server if you want to do so. Until then, see you later.